There comes a quiet moment in many women's lives when a strange question begins to surface, one that feels almost forbidden to ask. Why does love feel so exhausting when it was supposed to feel nourishing? At first, it shows up as a subtle fatigue. You notice that you are the one listening more, understanding more, adjusting more. You reassure, you explain, you wait, you give the benefit of the doubt. From the outside, you look loving, patient, and emotionally mature. Yet on the inside, something feels off. Instead of feeling closer, you feel thinner, as if pieces of you are quietly disappearing each time you try a little harder to be loved. This is the truth many women carry, but rarely say out loud. Loving more did not make you feel more connected. It slowly made you feel smaller. Not weaker, but diminished. Your needs became negotiable. Your boundaries softened without your consent. Your voice lowered its volume to keep the peace. You did not stop loving, you stopped taking up space. And what makes this so confusing is that you were praised for it. You were told you were kind, understanding, and emotionally intelligent. Yet your body knew something your mind kept trying to override. Love that requires you to shrink is not love that can sustain you. Carl Jung would not describe this experience as a failure of character or effort. He would see it as a psychological pattern rooted in fear, not affection. Chasing does not come from love itself. It comes from a subtle inner anxiety that whispers, "If I do not give more, I will be left." That fear rarely announces itself clearly. It disguises itself as devotion, loyalty, and care. But beneath it lives an old belief that being chosen requires constant proof. When that belief takes hold, love becomes work. Presence turns into performance, and the woman slowly loses contact with her own center. What makes this pattern so powerful is that it often begins unconsciously. You are not trying to chase. You are trying to preserve the connection. You are trying to be safe. You are trying to be enough. Jung taught that when fear operates beneath awareness, it shapes behavior while remaining invisible. You may tell yourself you are calm, independent, and secure, yet your nervous system is quietly scanning for signs of distance or disapproval. Love becomes something you manage rather than something you inhabit. Over time, this constant inner monitoring drains you. You feel tired not because you love deeply, but because you are abandoning yourself in small, repeated ways. Here is the strange question most people never consider. What if the reason love felt so hard was not that you cared too much, but because you were afraid to stop chasing? What if closeness was never missing, but your sense of self was? Jung believed that when a person moves away from their true center, the psyche responds with exhaustion, anxiety, and longing. These are not signs that you need to try harder. They are signals that something essential is being neglected. This journey begins here, not with strategies or techniques, but with awareness. When a woman understands why loving more made her feel smaller, she stands at the edge of a profound shift. Because the moment she stops chasing is not the moment she stops loving. It is the moment she starts returning to herself. Before anything changes on the outside, something subtle shifts on the inside. The problem does not begin with chasing texts, overgiving, or waiting by the phone. It begins much earlier, in a quiet internal movement that is easy to miss. Imagine a woman who appears grounded to everyone around her. She has her own life, her own work, her own routines. She tells herself she is not attached, that she is fine either way. Yet beneath that surface calm, her attention is constantly turned outward. She is watching tone, timing, and silence. She is adjusting her words, her needs, her availability, all in small ways that feel reasonable in the moment. A real-life example makes this clear. A woman meets someone she genuinely likes. At first, she is relaxed. She speaks freely. She laughs easily. Then one day, a message comes later than expected. Nothing dramatic happens, but inside her body tightens. She tells herself not to overreact. She stays polite. She does not ask for reassurance. Instead, she becomes more accommodating. She listens more carefully. She softens her opinions. She delays expressing a need, so she does not seem demanding. From the outside, she looks mature. From the inside, she is slowly leaving herself. This is where Jung's insight becomes crucial. He taught that the psyche speaks through energy long before it speaks through words. The moment love begins to cost a woman her inner position, her energy changes. She may still say the right things. She may still act lovingly, but she is no longer fully present. Her attention is split between the moment and the outcome, between who she is and who she thinks she needs to be in order to stay connected. That split is not visible, but it is deeply felt by the nervous system. Over time, this inner shift shows up in everyday moments. She feels a low level of anxiety before seeing him. She rehearses conversations in her head. She feels relief when things go well and quiet panic when they do not. She stops asking herself what she wants and starts asking what will keep the connection safe. Jung would describe this as the ego moving away from the self. Not dramatically, but incrementally. Each small adjustment feels harmless. Together, they create a loss of center. The painful part is that this often happens to women who are emotionally aware and deeply caring. They are not trying to manipulate, they are trying to love responsibly. Yet responsibility slowly turns into self-monitoring. Care turns into vigilance. Love turns into effort. And effort, when driven by fear of loss, carries a different psychological weight. Others may not be able to explain why, but they feel it. The connection starts to feel heavy, not because she is doing something wrong, but because she is no longer rooted in herself. Jung warned that when a relationship requires the sacrifice of one's inner truth, it cannot remain alive. Something essential has been traded away. The woman may still be there physically, but energetically, she has stepped out of her own body. This is why chasing rarely feels like chasing at first. It feels like being considerate, being flexible, being emotionally intelligent. Only later does she notice the cost. She feels tired after interactions that once energized her. She feels uncertain about herself in ways she never did before. Her sense of identity becomes dependent on how the relationship is going. This is the moment the viewer is invited to recognize. Not the moment when love ended, but the moment when she quietly left herself to keep it alive. When did you stop expressing something that mattered to you? When did you start editing your truth? When did you begin measuring your worth through someone else's response? Jung believed that awareness is the beginning of individuation. So the question is not who made you chase. The real question is, where did you step away from yourself, and what would happen if you returned? Care does not become a problem because it is excessive. It becomes a problem when it carries a hidden request. To understand this, we have to look honestly at what is happening beneath the surface of good intentions. Consider a woman who truly loves deeply. She remembers details, checks in, and offers support without being asked. She listens patiently and tries to anticipate needs. From her point of view, this is what love looks like. Yet, again and again, she notices the same painful outcome. The more she cares, the more distant the other person becomes. A real-life example makes this painfully clear. A woman is in a relationship where communication has become inconsistent. Instead of naming her need directly, she doubles down on care. She sends thoughtful messages. She becomes extra understanding of his stress. She reassures him that she is not asking for too much. Inside, she is hoping that her devotion will inspire closeness. But something subtle shifts. He starts replying later. He becomes vague about plans. Eventually, he says he feels pressure, even though she never asked for anything explicitly. From a Jungian perspective, this is where intention and motivation diverge. Jung taught that the psyche is not guided by what we consciously believe we are doing, but by what the unconscious is seeking to resolve. When care is driven by fear of abandonment, the shadow becomes active. The shadow is not something evil. It is the part of us that carries unmet needs, unhealed wounds, and disowned vulnerability. In this case, the shadow is whispering, "If I care enough, I will be chosen. If I am understanding enough, I will be safe." This creates a quiet psychological pressure. It is rarely spoken, but it is felt. Others sense that the care is not free. It is leaning forward. It is waiting for a response. It is subtly asking for reassurance, for consistency, for proof. Even emotionally unaware people can feel this weight, though they may not know how to name it. The nervous system picks up what words hide. This is why people often pull away without explanation. Not because the woman is too much, but because her care is no longer just care. It has become a strategy for safety. Jung would say that when love is used to secure the ego, it loses its vitality. The other person may feel guilty, restless, or trapped, even if the woman has done nothing wrong on the surface. Many women recognize this pattern only in hindsight. They remember moments when they cooked more meals, gave more space, offered more patience, all while feeling increasingly anxious inside. They may have told themselves they were being mature. But maturity that suppresses need is not maturity. It is self-abandonment dressed up as strength. The tragedy is that this kind of care often comes from women who are deeply capable of real love. They are intuitive, emotionally rich, and sincere. Yet because their own inner needs remain unspoken or unmet, their love becomes heavy. Jung believed that what is not made conscious is lived out in relationship, so the unmet need for security does not disappear. It travels through care, through generosity, through silence. At a certain point, caring more feels like the only option. Letting go feels terrifying. Asking directly feels risky. So she keeps giving, hoping the other person will finally feel it and choose her freely. But the more she gives from fear, the less free the connection becomes. This is the uncomfortable mirror this section holds up, not to create shame, but awareness. Where has your care been an offering, and where has it been a plea? When did love stop flowing outward and start leaning forward? Jung would say that transformation begins the moment we see the shadow without judgment. So the question is not whether you care too much. The real question is, what are you hoping your care will finally give you? And what would change if you gave that to yourself instead? At some point, the confusion becomes impossible to ignore. This is usually the moment when a woman looks at her life and asks a question that feels both honest and unsettling. Why does the same ending keep finding me, even after all this work? She did not stay stuck. She did not repeat old mistakes blindly. She changed. She healed. She grew. And yet the story did not change with her. A real-life example makes this painfully familiar. A woman leaves a relationship that drained her. She takes time alone. She reads the books. She goes to therapy. She learns about boundaries, attachment styles, and self-worth. She starts saying no. She takes better care of her body. She feels proud of how far she has come. When she meets someone new, she feels different this time. Calmer, more aware, less reactive. She tells herself she is finally ready, but months later she finds herself sitting in the same emotional space she swore she had outgrown. The conversations become inconsistent. The connection feels promising but undefined. She starts wondering where she stands. She waits for clarity that never fully arrives. Eventually, the relationship fades without a clear ending. Again. And this time, the pain cuts deeper because she cannot blame ignorance anymore. Jung would say this is the moment when the psyche demands a deeper truth, not another technique, not another explanation. The woman did everything right on the surface, but something unconscious was still leading. She believed she was loving freely, but inside she was still watching, still measuring, still waiting for confirmation that she mattered. The work she did strengthened her awareness, but it did not yet dissolve the core belief that love equals being chosen. This is where the shadow becomes subtle. It no longer looks like desperation or chaos. It looks like patience. It looks like understanding. It looks like giving someone space while quietly hoping they will step forward. Jung taught that the most powerful unconscious patterns are the ones that wear the mask of virtue. In this case, the mask is growing. The woman believes she is healed because she is no longer chasing outwardly. But inwardly, she is still orienting herself around another person's response. Many women recognize this pattern only when they are alone again, replaying moments that felt small but significant. The pause before sending a message, the relief when the phone lights up, the disappointment when it does not, the internal debate about whether to ask for clarity or stay quiet to appear secure. These are not signs of failure. They are signs of an unconscious waiting that has not yet been released. Jung called this repetition compulsion. The psyche repeats what it has not yet integrated. The woman is not attracting unavailable people by accident. She is unconsciously recreating the same emotional dynamic in a more refined form. The outer situation changes, but the inner orientation remains the same. Love is still being used as a mirror to answer the question, "Am I finally chosen?" The turning point comes when she sees this without shame, when she realizes that healing is not about becoming more desirable, but about becoming more anchored. The truth she avoided was not that she was unlovable. It was that she was still asking love to prove something to her. This section is a mirror because it asks a quiet but radical question. What if the pain did not come from doing it wrong, but from still waiting for the world to confirm what you have not yet claimed inside? What if being unchosen was not a verdict, but an invitation to stop negotiating your worth through connection? And what would change in your relationships if you no longer needed love to answer that question for you? What happens next is quieter, and that is why it is so dangerous. There is no dramatic collapse, no clear moment where everything breaks. Instead, something essential begins to thin out. A woman does not lose herself all at once. She fades in small, reasonable ways that look like love, maturity, and emotional intelligence. You see this pattern everywhere in real life. A woman enters a relationship telling herself she is being patient. She listens more than she speaks. She gives space when she feels lonely. She explains away behavior that hurts her because she understands his wounds, his stress, and his past. When something feels wrong, she tells herself she is overthinking. When her needs arise, she delays them, waiting for a better moment. She becomes skilled at holding back her truth in the name of harmony. From the outside, she looks calm, generous, and evolved. Inside, something vital is slowly being muted. Jung's distinction between ego and self helps reveal what is happening beneath the surface. The ego wants to preserve connection at all costs. It fears loss, rejection, and abandonment. The self, however, seeks wholeness, It cannot survive when parts of the psyche are silenced for too long. When a woman repeatedly chooses harmony over honesty, understanding over self-respect, and patience over presence, the ego may feel safer, but the self begins to withdraw. This is how love turns into self-betrayal, disguised as kindness. She is not lying to others, she is lying to herself. She tells herself that being low maintenance is a strength, that needing less makes her easier to love, that asking for clarity would push him away. Over time, she stops noticing what she feels because nothing changes when she speaks. Her preferences soften, her desires become vague, her voice adapts to the room. She is still there, but she is no longer fully alive in the connection. Many women recognize this only after the relationship ends. They look back and realize the grief is not just about losing someone, it is about how much of themselves they left behind while trying to keep the bond intact. Jung would say this is the cost of ego-led love. It preserves attachment, but fractures the inner life. The painful truth this section names is simple and unsettling. Many women did not lose love first. They lost themselves first, and love could not stay where the self was no longer welcome. This raises a question that deserves honest reflection. In how many moments did you silence yourself to keep the peace? How often did you call it love when it was actually fear of being alone? And what would change if you believed that love should never require your disappearance to survive? At some point, many women believe they have finally moved on. They can speak about the past calmly. They understand what went wrong. They no longer replay every conversation. On the surface, it looks like closure, yet something subtle keeps happening beneath awareness, and it tells a different story. A real-life example makes this clear. A woman ends a relationship that drained her. She journals, reflects, and even feels proud of how clearly she can explain the dynamic. She tells friends she is no longer attached. But when a new connection appears, her body reacts before her mind does. She checks her phone too often. Her chest tightens when messages slow down. She reads meaning into tone, timing, and silence. She tells herself she is being irrational, yet the anxiety does not listen. Intellectually, she has let go. Emotionally, she is still waiting. Jung named this pattern repetition compulsion. The psyche repeats what it has not yet made conscious. Understanding alone does not dissolve it, because the belief driving it lives deeper than thought. The unconscious belief is quiet, but powerful. I am only safe when I am chosen. As long as this belief remains hidden, the body stays alert, scanning for signs of selection or rejection. This is why many women feel confused by their own reactions. They wonder why they feel anxious when nothing is wrong, why calm, respectful connections still feel emotionally exhausting. Why are they drawn to situations that recreate the same tension in new forms? Jung would say the psyche is not sabotaging them. It is asking to be seen. In daily life, this looks like waiting for energy, waiting for the text, waiting for reassurance, waiting for clarity, waiting for someone to choose fully. Even when a woman appears detached, her nervous system may still be braced, hoping the next interaction will finally bring relief. This is not a weakness. It is an unresolved survival pattern. The turning point comes when the pattern is no longer judged, but recognized. When she stops asking, "Why am I like this?" and begins asking, "What is this protecting?" when she sees that the waiting is not about the person in front of her, but about an old fear that has never been held with compassion. Jung believed that what repeats is not punishment, but an invitation. Each familiar ending is a signal pointing inward, not outward. The question becomes deeply personal. What part of you still believes love must be earned? What part is still waiting to be chosen to feel safe? And what might change if you stop trying to think your way out of a pattern that is asking to be felt and integrated instead? There is a quiet moment when the chase ends, and it does not look dramatic from the outside. No announcement, no grand exit, just an internal shift where a woman realizes she is tired of abandoning herself to feel loved. In that moment, something settles inside her. The nervous waiting dissolves. The constant scanning softens. She is no longer leaning forward into life, hoping to be pulled closer. She stands where she is. This is the moment Jung would call a return to the self. Not the ego that tries to manage outcomes, impress others, or secure attachment, but the deeper center that does not negotiate its existence. When a woman chooses herself at this level, she does not withdraw from love. She withdraws from self-betrayal. Her warmth remains, her openness remains. What disappears is the quiet hunger beneath her gestures. In real life, this change feels subtle but unmistakable. She no longer explains herself excessively. She no longer adjusts her truth to maintain harmony. She listens more closely to her body than to her fears. When someone pulls away, she feels it, but she does not chase the feeling into panic. When someone leans in, she receives it without gripping. Her energy no longer reaches outward to secure a connection. It circulates inward, grounded, steady, present. This is where magnetism begins, not as a technique, but as a byproduct of inner coherence. People respond differently because there is no pressure in her presence. She is not asking to be chosen. She is choosing herself in real time, through her boundaries, her pace, her honesty. Jung taught that the psyche organizes itself around what we value most. When self-respect becomes the organizing center, life rearranges accordingly. Aligned connections arrive because they can. Respect deepens because it is met, not demanded. Love becomes simpler because it is no longer mixed with fear. This does not mean she never feels uncertainty again. It means uncertainty no longer rules her choices. She can feel desire without losing herself. She can feel attachment without surrendering her center. The lesson is not to stop loving. It is to stop disappearing in the act of loving. When a woman no longer needs the world to confirm her worth, the world begins to meet her differently. Not because she changed who she is, but because she finally stayed. She already chose herself, and everything that truly belongs to her can now find her without being chased. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.